Okay. Hi, Maureen. Thanks for joining. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, okay? Put this down here. Okay. How's that? You know, I can see you, but it's not a very nice one to start with. Get back to the beginning.
I can see the slides. Can you, Rachel?
Yes, I can. I'm just there. Okay, here I am. Okay, I've got you at the bottom, but that's okay. Here we go. The simplest path to peace, which is following the golden rule, layer 2. And I just want to say the reason why I'm giving these talks is because by using the golden rule, it's so simple. It's just the golden rule. It sets us all completely free of the past, of any ill feelings you have of yourself or of others. And by following the golden rule, it gives us the freedom to be our innocent, beautiful expression of spirit that we are. Right? But this week, this week is a little bit heavy, but it's when we kind of pick off the scab and get to the source of all our pain and why we see pain out in the world. But next week, I will show you how none of it's true, right? So this week, layer 2, we're going to focus on how guilt seeks punishment. All right, here we are. Now, guilt seeks punishment. Guilt is just a belief. It's not even true. And it is the only belief that I have to change because it is what keeps me separated from who I really am, which is one with the pure loving spirit. When we separate, don't do the golden rule, we go into guilt. When we're holding on to that guilt, that's the only belief which is underneath all beliefs that we need to shift. And I will show you next week how it will shift it. But this week, I really want to show you how this guilt creates the unloving world that we see. Okay. Choose a golden rule kind of day. So last week I said that whether I follow the golden rule or not will make the difference between having a joyful, peaceful day, being in alignment with who I really am, or having a stressed, depressed day, feeling separated from who I really am as a loving person. All my pain and suffering and negative feelings come from a belief that I have treated someone else in an unloving way that I would not want to be treated. So not following the golden rule. Whoops, no wait, sorry. Here's a nice quote from Christina Aguilera, one of her songs. I'm sorry for blaming you for everything I just couldn't do. And I've hurt myself by hurting you. I've got a cough, so I apologize for that. It's guilt. I'm dealing with it. Okay. So how is our guilt, not following the golden rule, the source of every single negative action, event, or words I experience out in the world? When I think, talk, or behave in a way that I would not want to have happened to me, I feel terribly sad because I do not want to do to anyone what I wouldn't want done to me, because I know how it feels. I know exactly how it feels. And so as I know how that feels, I know what it feels like when I'm dishing it out. What's happening when I'm doing that? I mentioned this a bit last week, but I really want to focus on this. I'm getting it all over me, right? As I'm dishing out, it's all going through me first. And the truth is, which I will more focus on next week, is that actually I'm only doing it to myself. No matter how much I think I'm hurting somebody, I'm actually doing it to myself and no one else. But I'll explain that more next week. This week, I want to focus on this guilt and how it creates this terrible world. So I want us to know that giving and receiving are one and the same. They are one and the same. I receive what I give, and I'm actually giving what I receive. And so just as an aside, it's so important that we receive, because when we receive, when we let people give, they feel good. They actually receive when I'm receiving. We have to really realize that we're all one, and what I'm ever giving you, whether it's joy, love, or whatever, or honesty, grace, I'm giving it to myself. You are basically me. But at this point, I also want to explain what we do to ourselves when we are treating someone other than we would want to be treated. Just like I said, I experience and feel ashamed, disappointed, horrified with myself because I believe I've hurt someone else. We could stop right there and go and say sorry and decide not to do that again because it didn't feel good, right? Really, the only person I have to say sorry to is myself. But at this point, we believe we've hurt somebody. So if we could stop right now and go and say sorry and decide not to do it again, that guilt would be over, right? But owning it sometimes is even too much for me to admit. So I know this sounds extreme, but it's actually what we do. Okay. What do I do instead? Is in my shame, guilt, and disappointment and horror that I treated someone in an unloving manner, I decide I could never admit this because I would be admitting that I am dispassionate or maybe unloving, inconsiderate. Maybe I'd have to admit, maybe I have anger issues, or I'm abusive, or that I made a mistake, right? And I really believe that maybe I'm unforgivable. But as I'm really going to get into next week, we're completely forgivable. There's nothing that isn't forgivable. In fact, we haven't even done anything that needs forgiving. I need to say that because this week's a little heavy. This is guilt. Okay, there we are. It's human to see ourselves in other people. This is why we blame everyone but ourselves. Now, if I don't admit it, own it, or I'm not accountable, I reject it by projecting it. I hurl it out onto anything to take that pain of self-blame and shame off of myself, right? So instead of taking responsibility, I project it out there and blame someone else so I can pretend it's not my fault. Wasn't me. An example might be, here's some examples, that I spill my tea and I might blame it on an uneven countertop or a surface or a table, or I might blame it on a waitress for giving me a tippy cup, or I might treat somebody unkindly by saying they deserve it, right? Always making up an excuse. And I just got a speeding ticket the other day, and I was watching myself wanting to be upset with the police officer, right? Like, and so quickly, I take that blame off myself, and also tried to blame it on the speed sign, the speed limit sign, saying it was hidden and too tiny to even see. Now, another way I project my own blame is I quickly shove those blame feelings down inside me really quickly, bury them deeply where nobody will ever find out what a terrible person I am. And again, I'm sorry this is a bit of a heavy week, but I promise none of it's true. None of it's true, but it's what we do. And I know it's what we do because when we look at how we look at the state of the world, it shows us what's going on inside. I know this sounds extreme, but it's what most of us do. And I apologize if you don't. Okay. We go into denial. Whatever we do, we can't run away or bury our feelings. Because if we do, if we try, we bury them alive. And this is guilt. This says the worst feeling in the world is the homesickness that comes over a man occasionally when he is at home. That's right. So this is the guilt seeks punishment. When I have guilt, I am feeling separated from my loving true self of who I am. And I long to go home to my innocence. I'm only ever separated from this loving truth of who I am. Right? But I believe that I'm unforgivable. So I hide and hope it goes away. Hope it just goes away. I'm literally like a child in hiding, terrified of my punishment, but also wanting it, right? So I can get relief. It's a terrible feeling of being, this relief of being separated from the loving truth of who I am. Sorry about these awful pictures. So I now have a movie of guilt playing in my subconscious, and now I project it onto my world. So I'm looking for my comeuppance. I'm going to see that punishment out there, and I'm going to project it all over the place. I will be thinking, because I will think everybody knows, or people know, or this is happening because I'm bad. But it's so subconscious. I will project it onto situations, onto people, or onto my body as sickness, which is what I'm doing right now. So anything negative I see or imagine outside of me is actually an illusion of the punishment I believe I deserve. If I'm frightened, I see something frightening out there. It is a sign that I believe goes right back. I basically feel like I've hurt someone and I feel guilty. I haven't followed the golden rule. We might be afraid of, see, I've got monsters here. You know, we believe in somebody out there is going to hurt me. My children, there's a monster in the closet. And then the one at the top, anger. You know, if you're guilty, you imagine people are shouting at you when they're not even shouting. They might just be being emphatic. And if you feel guilty, you feel shouted at. And then that other one in the middle, that's sickness. We project this guilt onto our body. And then also we see all this upsetness in the world. And I know this sounds lofty and grandiose, but because this is war. But next week, I'll show you on a smaller scale, maybe not starting with woe, because that's too big, how we can see a more beautiful world. Okay. Next one. Home is where you are loved the most and act the worst. So the Spirit always wants you to come home. Your true self always wants you to come home. And then I've got here, prayer is a way of asking for something. It is the medium of miracles, but the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness, because those who have been forgiven have everything. So how do I make all this pain and projection stop? I need to forgive only myself from the hurt I believe, or more accurately, I perceived I have caused another. I need to go home and find my innocence, and it will be there. So the answer is forgiveness. And next week, I'll show you how there's nothing to forgive. All right. So just trust. But I needed to explain this step. Here we are, Superman. But here's the golden key, the key to forgiveness. I never really have to feel guilty, because the only person I can actually hurt is myself. All right. And I can't even really hurt myself. But realizing that I can't hurt anybody makes it easier to deal with and fix, because there's only one person. All right. I can never actually hurt anyone, and nobody can ever hurt me. We are invulnerable, and so is everybody else. Just that. This is my second last slide. Okay. So next week, I will show you how you are completely innocent. And do you know that knowing your innocence is the key to peace? If I am innocent, which I always am, no matter what anybody does or says to me, I feel no pain, physically, emotionally, or psychically. When I'm innocent, I feel no pain, and neither does anybody else. I want to keep saying that because this week's a little heavy. Hold on. Somebody's here. Sorry about that. Okay, now here's the last slide. So, but for this week, I invite you to just wrap your mind around the idea that guilt seeks punishment. It's just a kind of nasty step we need to become aware of, and just to be mindful of when I'm choosing not to follow the golden rule, which will lead to feeling guilty. So just be mindful. You don't even have to believe it. Just maybe be open-minded to see, oh, am I following the golden rule? And even in our thoughts, when we're thinking things, they're just thoughts, they're just ideas for us to consider. And they're giving us information. So we can, if we're feeling unhappy thinking that, well, then don't think it. Or if something needs to be dealt with, then we can deal with it in the way you would want to be dealt with. Okay, so that is my talk for today. I think that's enough. So today it's about understanding that we feel guilty. And this is the only belief we need to shift. And it's not true. Okay, there we go. stop sharing. Hi, Christina. Hi, Marie.
Hi, thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome. I'm sorry it's kind of heavy and you guys probably know it already, but it's a big one. It's a big one because we really make it's true. We make our pain about everything else.
Yeah, it's a good one to stay mindful of, that's for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.